everyone. Thank you, Gerry, for coming and joining us.
Very welcome. Very welcome.
You should know that Gerry came from Scotland yesterday, and Scotland is in Europe, but it took him 18 hours to get here, so I think he needs a big applause. Gerry sent us a very nice video, so I would like to start with the video, and then the two of us is going to have a little conversation. Gerry, you have been a trailblazer, a pioneer in the social enterprise sector. You worked in it for almost 40 years now. So that was long before we talked about social enterprises, we talked about impact investing. So what drive you to start entering this business, and what have kept your passion for the business in all these years?
Thanks, Elisabet. I guess I went into disability services in Ireland after university, and I was driven by a passion for fairness. At the time, that was in a social enterprise before the term was being used, but I saw that the reality for many people with disabilities was they didn't have the incomes or the choice to make decisions about housing and getting married and having a future that other people did. So that was my initial passion. It was establishing social enterprises that gave better opportunities and better choices for people with disabilities. And I was fortunate to be part of an emerging social enterprise movement, initially in the UK and Ireland, and then globally. And I observed that this world was very fragmented. There was no awareness in the USA of social enterprise happening on other continents. There was no awareness in Africa of social enterprises happening on other continents. So our first ambition was simply to try and connect the social enterprise movement. And when we did that, what we discovered was the social capital that exists between people who are establishing businesses to serve people and planet. It's a very special thing. It doesn't exist in the corporate sector. It doesn't exist in the education sector. This wonderful social capital meant that we built a community, and we're continuing to build a community around the world. And the feedback and reward that we get from doing that has completely kept me involved and passionate about social enterprise. Every day is a different challenge, but we're making progress in growing and strengthening the social enterprise movement. So it's quite easy to stay fresh and passionate about it when you see that your work has this amazing return.
So this is one of the reasons you started back in 2008, the Social Enterprise World Forum. You were about 400 delegates back in Edinburgh in Scotland, and last year I had the opportunity to participate in the Social Enterprise World Forum in Amsterdam, and I think we were almost 2,000 people there. It was an amazing event. And next year you're going even to Taipei. I mean, this is very interesting. So tell me a little about how has the sector evolved during these 16 years, and what are the current state of the sector today?
Okay, so the sector has grown year by year, and it's very diverse, and it's growing in different ways and there are different models around the world, but one of the common traits is that people recognize that we have a problem with our global economy, and there are extractive enterprises that are damaging people and planet, and young people in particular want to do things differently. So at SEWF, for the first 10 years, we were convening. We kept it very simple. We brought people together once a year, and we convened and we created community, and people traded with each other, they shared information with each other, and they built that social capital. After 10 years, we decided to address different issues. We've been an advocate and a lobbyist for positive policy on social enterprise, because if you're developing a social enterprise in a country where there are legal structures, there are fiscal advantages, there are social procurement, you have huge advantages over trying to run that enterprise in a country where there's an absence of structure and an absence of policy. So we've been working with governments and with global agencies to advocate and make the case for social enterprise policy now for quite a few years. And on Wednesday at our policy forum, who would have thought that a topic as boring as a policy forum, that we'd actually have 1,500 people registered from over 30 countries around the world to participate in a dialogue around social enterprise policy. At that forum, we launched our Rural Social Enterprise Manifesto, which is all about recognizing the needs of rural social enterprises, which are quite different from their urban counterparts, and the need for policymakers to take these things into account when they're developing policy for rural communities. So the sector around the world is very diverse. As I said, we started off convening. Now we're doing policy influencing, policy advocacy, and we're also through People and Planet First, addressing the huge challenge of the fragmented identity of social enterprise. So wherever in the world a social enterprise is, it doesn't really matter what it's called, because it is working for people and planet. And that's our biggest challenge, I think. It's to address this challenge of identity of social enterprise, and we're doing that through People and Planet First.
I think you need to explain 2 words. What is People and Planet in that case?
Happy to do that. People and Planet First is a verification system where we have 52 partners at the moment, and we are looking for an Italian partner in countries around the world who look at the structure of a social enterprise. They check for us the governing document and the accounts, and they verify that it is a social enterprise. This came to us from bottom up. Social enterprises in many countries where there's an absence of a structure or a mark to identify a social enterprise, they feel that they can't they don't get the recognition for the social and environmental purpose of their work, and that can affect their ability to attract customers at government level, amongst just general consumers, and also with businesses. At the same time, we had corporates and governments telling us it's too hard to identify social enterprises. We would love to trade and do business, but it's too hard. So we've developed this system of verification, which around the world is being used now. The video is a bit old. We're over 90 countries, and our ambition is to use People and Planet First as a way to expand this global community under a common identity.
So I understand from a previous conversation is that this has been also one of the, the pieces of a puzzle in Australia, because it really changed the situation in Australia for social enterprises.
Yeah, Australia is probably one of the examples of legacy for us, that when we started in 2021 discussing SEWF going to Australia, there was an absence of commitment from the federal government. There wasn't a national social enterprise agency collating and organizing the sector, and some states had social enterprise networks, but not all. And if you fast forward to 2022, when we pitched up in Australia, the federal government were very involved. There was a network in every state, and Social Enterprise Australia had existed for a year and was doing great work to organise the sector. Now the Australian government has launched a $13.5 million social enterprise development fund, and thankfully for us, the criteria for access pretty exactly match the 5 standards of People and Planet First. So every day when we wake up, we have verification applications from Australia.
Okay, one last word. Jacksim talked about exploiting. I know you're talking about something different. Can you give us one final buzzword for the social enterprise sector today?
Well, I think we would like people to recognize that the current business model, the predominant business model, is based on extractive businesses. Businesses that create obscene wealth for a small number of people who extract from society and who damage the planet. And we shouldn't be shy in speaking about corporate business as extractive. We should challenge that model. There's no use putting perfume on the model and having better CSR. We're interested in a new economy, one which is based on regenerative businesses. And many social enterprises don't think of themselves as regenerative, but cumulatively, when you go to work and your work is assisting people and planet, what you're doing is you're part of a movement which is trying to regenerate business model in the interests of planet and society.
Thank you, Gerry.
Thank you, Elisabet.
So take the